Hi, how you doing? You know, July perennial blooms seem to be easy and abundant, but then August rolls around and those July perennials begin to fade and we hang on to every last flower for every last bit of color. But August in Zone 3 doesn't have to mean the end of your garden's beauty. So in this video, I'm going to give you my current top 10 that seem to just shine in an August garden in Zone 3. They are low-maintenance, cold-hardy perennials that provide stunning color throughout the month of August and even into September and on through frost. Stick around to see which ones made my list. My name is Sharon, and I garden on a large yard in a small town in East Central Saskatchewan, Zone 3. Welcome to my Sask Garden. The first one I'm going to mention here is Heliopsis, and it's also called false sunflower. You know, I always call this one the workhorse of the late summer garden. This year they're huge. They're taller than me this year, but you can see I have no support in them and they hold up fairly well. They get the odd stem that kind of droops down. They're also great cuttings, flowers for cutting for a vase. They will hold up in a vase for, it seems like, weeks, and they are really beautiful flowers. This one is called Summer Sun. There are a few varieties of Heliopsis. There's one with variegated foliage, and I have another one I'm going to show you that has dark burgundy foliage, but in the stores I've seen a variety. I've had Summer Sun in my garden for years and years, and this here is a very large stand of them. A number of them are just seeded out and grew all on their own. You can leave the seed heads for over winter, and the birds like the seed heads. Also, I don't have any dry flowers on this plant or any of the plants because they've really just started blooming, and they are going to provide this kind of interest all month. But the dried flower heads are perfect. They get kind of a white color and they don't lose their petals really, or they just kind of keep that. I shouldn't say white, it's probably more beige. They just keep that color, and the shape of the petal or the shape of the flower stays perfectly. They're really very interesting, and I wish they didn't seed out so much in my yard because I would leave them more simply for that interest. But as it is, they do, you know, this is why I have so many, is because they do seed out. When they start setting seed, then I will go in and either deadhead if there's still lots of blooms coming, or I will just cut the plant back by half in the late fall, and then I leave the rest of the stem standing just to catch the snow for through the winter, just for protection. Although I doubt very much that it really needs any extra winter protection. So you could cut them down even further if you chose to not have anything standing in your yard for winter. And this is the other Heliopsis I have. This one is called Burning Hearts, and you can see the nice dark foliage that it has. As I recall, I don't think it fades out at all. It doesn't fade to green like some dark foliaged plants can happen. It doesn't seem to have any problem whatsoever. It may be just slightly floppy. I think that until they make a fairly large stand, Heliopsis can be like this, especially when they have lots of bloom on top. Just speaking of the blooms, so you'll see they have that nice red center. And then as the blooms fade, that red center goes away, and the cone in the center part, gets much larger than the small young flowers. And also when petals fall off, those cones stay, and they provide quite a bit of interest. And again, the birds really seem to like those seed heads right there. I don't think this one seeds out. I've not found any seedlings for it or any Heliopsis seedlings around here. Now, I will say that I initially planted 2 and one just up and died one year, and I don't really know why. I don't think it was winter hardiness, and this one has gone on to live a couple more years. So, you know, I'm not doing a 1 to 10 best to worst kind of in my countdown, but I am going to say that Heliopsis is probably my #1 perennial for the Zone 3 late summer garden. I said it's a workhorse. It truly is. It just keeps busting out the blooms. It provides such bright color, especially the summer sun. I can't really say any of the others because I've always been pretty happy with summer sun and the way it grows and the amount of bloom it has all the way through right through till frost. And speaking of frost, I have had the summer sun. I can't attest to this one, to Burning Hearts, but I have had summer sun survive light frosts. Now, this plant that we're looking down on here is obedient plant, and it just looks like a bunch of green right now because it is just starting to bloom, and it has a very long bloom. I think that it will go for at least a month, and here you can see that they are just starting. I think I have a photo or 2 that I can put up on the screen to show you what they look like when they're in full bloom, and really pretty. Now, the downfall with this plant is going to be, this is year 3 for this plant, and you can see how far it has spread, and it runs a bit. And so even though it runs a bit, I'm sort of thinking about letting it do that, because I think in my mind, it might be interesting to have these popping up throughout the garden, throughout the lilies, and throughout the, like around the daylilies, all in through there. I think that that could be interesting. They don't really seem to form big clumps. I haven't read that they will actually take over or overtake other perennials. And so if they don't, I'm willing to try it back here for a little while and see what they do. I like sort of spiky plants popping up here and there, although I feel like this might be a little bit more than here or there. I've not tried to dig one up or any up just yet, although I have read that they are easy to dig up and move around, and best done so in the spring. They're a full sun perennial, and I have not found that they suffer at all from drought, and this area certainly has seen its share of drought, and they just keep on going. So I'm going to say this is a great plant for fall color if you have the space to let it go, or if you're willing to divide it up every once in a while, if you don't want to let it go and let it run through your garden. I have quite a bit of monkshood, and this is a stand of solid purple that was actually a seedling from the bicolor that I also have. This I find to be a very easy to grow perennial. This is also aconitum, also known as wolfsbane, and it is a toxic plant. I handle it with bare arms and bare hands, and I have never had any trouble. I think its toxicity probably has a lot more to do with eating it or trying to eat it. But you know, if you have littles or pets running around your yard that like to put things in their mouth and you know, snack on plants, then some care would be required. But if you don't, I think that this is actually a really great plant. And here is the bicolor that I have as well. Just get up close there. And here's some more. I'm just going to mention that these are growing in almost in very heavy shade. They're in the trees, surrounded by shrubs and smaller trees, and a big silver willow over top of it hanging over. And they are growing and blooming just beautifully in the shade. You can see that they are just coming into bloom, and they will be in bloom here for quite a while. So I've added some of this dark purple back in the part sun, part shade border that I have, which I will mention back here in the backyard. We have a little bit of a work in progress going on, so you might see some messy spots from that. I'm just going to mention, because you may have seen it and wonder why I'm not talking about the mullein or the verbascum, and that's all these spikes of yellow and white blossoms. And I'm not mentioning those because they won't stay in bloom for much longer, probably about a week. But you cannot count on them, perhaps early in August, but you can't count on them for color toward the end of for the whole month of August. They actually have a rather short blooming period. But I do like them because they sort of look like, I don't know, I like spiky things coming up through the center of flower beds. I think they sort of look a little bit like candelabras, and I think there is one actually, a verbascum, that is called candelabra. Mine are seed grown. Again, if you're interested in the verbascum or this mullein, you do have to be very careful with letting it go to seed, because it will take over your garden. This plant is giant fleece flower, and I love this plant. I mean, I really love this plant. This is probably, I'm going to say this is going to be number 2 for my must-have perennials for the Zone 3 August garden, if you can spare the room. So it's Persicaria polymorpha, and on here the flowers are now spent, but it has been blooming since June, and it's just an impressive plant pretty much all season. It gets going very early in the year, puts out all this green growth, and then these beautiful flowers that just seem to last and last. And like even the spent flowers, they have that pinkish hue to them. I think that it's just gorgeous, and you can just leave it up and cut it down once a year. It's drought tolerant. It doesn't reseed. You cut it back in the spring. You could cut it back in the fall. I have cut it back in the fall as well. I think this is a very underused perennial, probably because of its size. At full grown, I'm going to say that you're going to need to allocate an 8x8 area, and probably 8 feet tall. My neighbor across the street has one that's old, and it is massive, and I really hope that this gets to be that size. This is shrub-like, even though it is perennial. It is beautiful. And I said that the blooms are spent, and I was basically talking about these. However, you can see that it actually has a smaller kind of late bloom, and even this, although the blooms are going to fall, or the little blossoms, each one of these is a tiny little blossom. Like there's just thousands of little blossoms on the plant. So I just wanted to bring you to this side so that you could see the absolute pinkness of this spent cluster right here. It seems to be the most pink so far, but certainly the whole bush is going to get that kind of coloration at some point. It's well on its way. Isn't it beautiful? Oh, I just think this is the best perennial. This is the bed on the side of our garage, and it is filled with a lot of daylilies, which is probably my next perennial that I think we should talk about. Daylilies are hemerocallis is the Latin name. Daylilies are aptly named because each flower will only last a day or two, I'm going to say, because some of the newer cultivars have, they call it a substance. That's the thickness of the leaf. And they have a stronger substance. They seem to last a little bit more. I have a lot of daylilies, and that was certainly by design. At one point, early in my perennial gathering, I found that I did have an awful lot of plants that bloomed in July. I had a lot of lilies at the time. It seemed like the end of June to the end of July was like a big wow factor in the garden, and then after that it just kind of died. I shouldn't say died, but it didn't have a whole lot of interest. So daylilies were one of the plants that I thought would help to bring that through. And, I think they do here on the side of the garage as well as in the backyard. I don't know. I thought I counted. I tried to count one time, and it was well over 100 different clumps of daylilies that I had. That's going to be more now because I've just split a whole bunch and divided and replanted a whole bunch. So they do make up a big part of the August garden in my yard. After that, I cut them back by half. And then in the spring, the foliage, just whatever foliage is left, just pulls out really easily. So they're very easy. I think they're very easy care. Like most of my perennials, I really don't fertilize them very much unless they are, definitely look like they're lacking something. I just kind of let them do their thing. And I think that they provide just a great spot of color in the garden. The other thing about daylilies is there is actually early, mid, and late season blooming daylilies. Now, they all still bloom within probably a month of each other, but on the front of my yard, you've perhaps seen it before, I have a daylily called Happy Returns, and it's kind of like a Stella daylily, a Stella d'Oro daylily, and has that same kind of habit and bloom time. And that blooms a lot earlier, whereas most of the others I have would be mid to late season blooms. I also, when I was ordering and choosing them, I also tried to pick ones that had heavy substance and a high bud count, in addition to them being either mid to late season blooming. And this next one is that I want to talk about that is a great contender for the late season perennial garden in Zone 3 is the tall garden phlox. The new ones are better than the old ones in that they have no mildew or powdery mildew issues like some of the old ones do. Now, this one here in front of the greenhouse is called Glamour Girl. It's very nice, but you will notice that it is, almost in full bloom already, and that is in part because it is right in front of the greenhouse, and so it woke up very early in the year, got going, and it blooms earlier in the year than some of the others that I have. Some of the ones I have alongside the garage I would have showed you, however, they are not even blooming yet. I do have a couple more in the backyard though. And this one is called the Luminary series, and it's called Opalescence. It smells magnificent. It really is beautifully scented, and this plant has already been in bloom for maybe 10 days, and it still has lots of buds yet to open. So it is fairly long blooming and just provides a great spot of color. This one is really nice, the light pink with the dark pink eye. As well, it's probably around 30 inches, 32 inches tall, and this one is year 3, I believe, for this plant. So it's put on a lot of growth. So here is the older variety. This is David Phlox, also very highly scented, shorter than Opalescence, but this one also is just coming back from suffering too much shade for a few years. I've trimmed off some branches from the tree that overhangs it, and so now it is much happier. Here is another one from the Luminary series. This one is called Prismatic Pink. I just planted that this year. And this one as well. This one is called Ultraviolet. Lots of buds yet to open on that one. And I want to talk about coneflower as being a great flower for the August garden and into September. It really does provide a great bright spot of color and is very hardy. Not all of them. This one is Powwow Wildberry, and I've had good luck with this one. And as you can see, it is just barely coming into bloom, so it's going to have a nice long bloom period yet. And this one is called Sunseeker's Bubblicious. This one is up earlier because of its location in front of the greenhouse, and so it does get growing a little bit quicker. Any southern exposure for a perennial, that's going to happen. This one is also, has survived winter just fine, and so it's another one that I can recommend as being a good echinacea for the garden. This is the only perennial rudbeckia that I have growing or blooming at the moment. And all the rest that I have are just forming their buds and coming into bloom. Great plant highly recommend this plant for the August and September garden. And after the petals fall, they have really nice cones that continue to provide interest. Now, the one we're looking at here is a 2-year-old seed. This is another one of the originals. Now, this is Rudbeckia goldstrum. And it is fully perennial for zone 3, very hardy, drought tolerant, great plant. And this bright spot of yellow that we're looking at here is the annual Rudbeckia. And I just want to mention this not as a must-have for the perennial for the perennial garden, although it may be a must-have for the annual garden. I think that would be a whole nother video, but that's a beautiful flower for the late season August and September garden. That is, I think, a seedling of Indian Summer, which would be this plant right here, would be Indian Summer, and then behind it there would be another seedling. But those plants are not this year's growth. They have overwintered and come back from last year. This plant right here, I think, is now on year 3. I also think that tall sedum are a great plant for the late season perennial garden in zone 3. In August, although this isn't yet blooming, as in the flower buds aren't yet open, they just get better and better from now on. But in August, they start to come into their own with the flower heads starting to show a bit of color. And this one is Matrona. It has a little bit of a purple tinge to the foliage. And this one is Autumn Joy. I'm going to see if I can find a better one, but I do like these. I think the panicles, the flower panicles, right, starting about now, just provide a whole lot of interest. I actually like these plants for pretty much the entire season. I think they're a great perennial, not just for August and September, but kind of for the whole season. And here is the Autumn Joy that, as I said, these just keep getting better and better from now until frost. Later in the season, you will also, if you have this in your yard, you will also notice that they are an absolute pollinator magnet. The bees, once the flower buds open, the bees just go crazy for this plant. And here is another tall sedum that I've just added to the gravel garden, and this is called Night Embers. And this one as well, this is a new planting, although I do have one other one of these. This is Back in Black. And You can see that the flower buds are beginning to open on this one. Beautiful plant. I love that dark foliage. And as well, there's some of the low-growing sedum that do bloom in the fall or in late summer instead of in the spring like many of the others do. This one is Sun Sparkler Blue Elf, I think it's called. I have 3 of these. They're a new planting for me, so I can't really say for sure, but I just thought I would mention how beautiful a little plant they are. And this is the other back in black sedum that I have, the tall sedum. Now, you can see here that this is not as tall as the other one. It's probably half the height. And so I'm going to say this is probably more in line with how it's going to look in our gardens, as opposed to growing in a pot in a greenhouse and then, fed all kinds of fertilizer and such. So I think it's actually going to be a shorter plant than, I don't think it'll be even as tall as the Autumn Joy, which can get fairly tall. And here is another Autumn Joy sedum, and this is just growing with a bunch of evening scented stalk. That doesn't look very nice during the day, but oh my gosh, the smell at night and in the evening is just amazing. And then, of course, there's ornamental grasses that really come into their own in the late summer and fall garden. And these ones that we're looking at are El Dorado. They are like a sibling of Carl Forster. They just have a yellow variegation to their leaf. But fully hardy. These have been here for a long time. As you can tell, they're very large stands. Certainly could stand to be divided to make room for something else as well, but beautiful plants for the fall and late summer garden. And here is a Carl Forster, just beautiful, blowing in the wind. And one of the things that I like best about Carl Forster is that they don't produce any seed, and also they don't run. A number of years ago, I grew a lot of different kinds of ornamental grasses. One of the flower beds in the backyard was actually all ornamental grasses. I devoted the entire bed. But, you grow them for the seed head primarily, and a lot of those seed heads will seed out. And if they don't seed out, then there is problem with some ornamental grasses running. Ribbon grass, I'm thinking of, is one that is like that beautiful grass, but it's difficult to control in the yard and will take over an area fairly quickly if you don't keep it contained. So, that's a big benefit of Carl Forster and any of its siblings. There is, in addition to El Dorado, there is also Avalanche and one more. I'm forgetting one more. There actually may be 2 more that I just read about, a 5th one just recently that I didn't even know about. But anyways, it's Calamagrostis acutiflora, and well worth, if you're looking for an ornamental grass, these are well worth looking for and adding to your yard. Did I go over 10? I think I may have. Oh well. So I think that there are many others, that are beautiful as well. I didn't even get into the foliage plants like Heuchera and Brunnera, the hosta, of course. All of those provide nice looking foliage all the way through to frost at least. And then some of them will wither and die away fairly quickly. I have a few others that I've added to the yard this year that I think may be great contenders next year for, great perennials part 2 for the August garden. I think there are others as well, for sure. But these are ones that if I think about what I can take away from my yard in the August garden, if I took those away, I feel like I would have very little left for color in the yard. So that's my, my top, however many it was, that's my list for this year anyway, my current list. Hey, thanks very much for hanging out and watching the video today. I hope you enjoyed it, and if you did, give me a thumbs up, and while you're down there, hit that share button. Thanks again. See you.